All right, so Ian, tell me a little bit about puppy biting.
Um, so puppy biting, I think, is probably one of the most pervasive complaints that new puppy owners have. I would say it's probably number one on the list. And it's probably one of the most misunderstood as well. So I would say let's start this conversation off with why do puppies bite in the first place? And there's a big misunderstanding about that. And so um, back in the early 80s, late 70s, Stanford and a bunch of other universities were doing studies on puppy behavior. One of the things that they discovered is that puppy biting, is one of the top five, if not in the top three things that a puppy does. And so that tells us that puppy biting is important. Like there's a reason that Mother Nature has coded that into their software, right? Now, a lot of people equate puppy biting with teething. And teething and puppy biting do not serve the same purposes. They don't occupy the same behavioral circles, I guess you would say. And so what we found out over the years is that puppies bite in order to develop what's called acquired bite inhibition, or ABI. And so ABI works like an unconscious limiter on the force of their jaws. And in an adult, that's an unconscious kind of thing. It happens under stress, but it's important. So I'll give you an example. I'll give you a scenario. And I think I used this scenario in the YouTube video, but like, let's say that you've got like a 3 or 4-year-old Rottweiler just asleep in the living room, just napping. Now, a kid goes running through the living room, as kids do, and let's say they step on that dog. Now, if you startle the dog out of sleep, they're going to come up and just because it's very scary to them. So because of that unconscious limiting that they learned as a puppy, a dog is either going to bite that kid and possibly cause serious damage because they have poor bite inhibition, or a dog with really great bite inhibition won't even make contact, right? At the very least, it'll just be like a muzzle punch. And so these kinds of situations where stress is involved, it's very important to get that dialed in early on. Here's another example why this is so important. So I deal with some reactivity and aggression cases. And of course, those are cases where stress accumulates very quickly. And so if somebody says, hey, I have this dog, it's reactive or it's aggressive or it's fearful or whatever it is, our very first question we ask is like, well, what's the bite history? Once we assess a bite history, then the next thing I do is I go down each bite and I assess the damage. And so there's several scales that have been developed. Dr. Ian Dunbar has a 6-point scale. Kara Shannon, who's another behaviorist, later on developed like an 8-point scale. But basically we use wound pathology to determine the bite inhibition of that dog, because that determines how I'm going to work with that dog. So for example, let's say one dog has 20 bites on record, right? And I say, well, what was the damage on those? And well, red mark, put a hole in my t-shirt, scratches, little rash, pinch, maybe a little bruising. I go, okay, so we have had 20 bites and the damage has been practically nothing. Like, that's a non-issue. That's a safe dog for me to work with. I feel like that's a good prognosis, right? Let's say another dog that we work with has 3 bites on record. And I go, well, what was the damage on those? Well, one was severe black and blue bruising over the entire area, stitches and or staples, and permanent nerve damage. My friend had to go to the hospital. I'd be like, we only have 3 bites. That is a scary dog to work with because its bite inhibition is so low right now, right? And so that changes the way we work with that dog. Those dogs might have the same kinds of problems, but one dog I'm going to feel very comfortable working with and not feel like I have to have so many layers of protection. Whereas the other dog, dude, right? So what does that have to do with puppy biting? Well, puppy biting, you have a very narrow window in their development before the brain chemistry changes to really dial that in. After about 18 weeks to 6 months, the brain chemistry starts to change. And once a dog enters adolescence, there are no methods to change bite force. It is what it is. It's hard coded in their software. So you have to start that work early. Now, puppies start that work by play biting. So they play bite so that they can get feedback from other dogs and other people, right? And that's why puppies have such sharp teeth, so that they can get a reaction with their weak jaw muscles. We want them to get pain response before they have very strong adult pain jaw muscles, which will cause damage. So, puppy to puppy, they play. Puppy grabs another puppy, and that puppy yips, and then the puppy goes like, licks, and I don't want to play with you anymore. And the puppy's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Please, 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 please. The puppies get back together and they re-engage. And now the puppy that was biting is less intense. And so if we have that in kind of interaction repeatedly over time, then the puppy learns to monitor the force of their own bite during play. So then mouthing, instead of becoming full on biting, it's just mouthing. They're just grabbing. The same thing happens when puppies interact with older dogs. That older dog, a friendly older dog, will put up with a lot of BS for a long time. And then, the puppy's hanging off his face, and the dog's like, bleh! And the puppy's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, And dogs are wonderful. They don't hold a grudge. Dogs are like, okay, just don't do that, Junior. And he's like, okay, I'm really sorry. And then that puppy's less intense. So they learn from the puppies and the adults. Now, Mother Nature's designed this to work in their litter and in their canine community. But humans get involved. And so at 8 weeks, we send them to a human household. So they've gotten some of that work in the first few weeks of being with their litter mates, which is one of the reasons it's so important to don't adopt a puppy before 8 weeks, because that time with their litter is 2 weeks for a puppy might as well be like 2 years for a human child. Like, it's tremendous. I've even seen my bulldog Dexter. I didn't get him until he was 10 weeks. The breeder wouldn't let him go until he's 10 weeks. And the difference in his confidence and stability was stupendous, because he had all that extra time with the older bulldogs and his litter mates. So when we get a puppy into our household, we have to continue this process. And so a lot of folks ask, well, how do I stop puppy biting? And my answer is like, well, you don't want to stop puppy biting because they need to do it. They have to use their mouth so that they learn to become a safe adult, right? So what do we do with that? Well, we make sure that that puppy has good socialization with other puppies and friendly older adults, because the dogs are way better at this than we are, right? And so those dogs will continue. And that's one of the reasons my puppy classes are off leash. So those puppies are doing it and doing it and doing it. I mean, geez, by week 6, I can have a pile of 4 puppies. And if they start to get kind of intense, I feel perfectly safe sticking my hand in there and just, okay, you go this way, you go that way. That's enough. That's enough. And I might get a mouth on me, but there's no pressure because they spent the last 6 weeks learning this from, 7 other puppies. In our own household, we have to give a pain response to teach them that that's too much. Human skin is literally thinner than a dog's skin. Dogs have a higher tolerance to biting. So we have to be really, really consistent with this. So if a puppy is playing with you and they bite you, you cry out. You're like, ow, right? Don't act like a puppy. A lot of people are like, yep, like a puppy. Like, no, a puppy, you're not fooling anybody. That puppy knows you're not a friggin' puppy, for crying out loud, So don't go like, ow, ow. It just jazzes them up, So a puppy bites you, like, ow, that hurt you, little jerk, And then you want to try again? And a lot of times puppies will just start licking and they're like, I'm really sorry. And so you have to consistently do that over several weeks. And so that's another hard thing for people to understand is, they're like, well, I tried it and my puppy's still crazy. And I'm like, talk to me after you've been doing this for like 6 weeks, right? So it takes weeks to get this right. It's not a one and done. And your puppy is still going to get you because you are training force, not frequency. And so your puppy's going to keep mouthing you and keep mouthing you and keep biting you and keep biting you. And so another pushback I give people is they're like, are you suggesting I allow a puppy to bite me? And I'm like, no, you don't allow the puppy to bite you, but you don't stop them. You give them a pain response so they learn to stop themselves. And that's a much more important kind of learning, right? So you might be 6 weeks into this and your puppy is still getting you, but if you can say that it's not biting and it's just mouthing now, you're making progress in the right direction. You're doing it right because now you're cultivating a safe adult dog. Once you have a soft mouth, now it's just an obedience problem. And that's an easy fix, right? But you can't do it the other way. You can't get the dog to stop biting because then they don't have bite training. You do the bite training and then you worry about it if they're still doing it. So the other thing too is there's a lot of puppies that are so intense, and so these are people that are not doing, they're not teaching the dog how to settle down or to cap their own energy or to spend time alone. So you have a lot of dogs that are just hyperactive, and so when they play with their owner, so here's like one metaphor I cooked up on my classes. So let's say you have an air tank that's cranked up to like 3,000 psi, right? And then you take it and you shoot a bullet into it. So now you've got this 3,000 psi tank coming out a hole this big, right? It's 3,000 psi coming out that hole. That's your dog if you are not burning off energy. So if you have a puppy that's hyperactive, has not been taught to be alone, has not taught to how to cap their own energy, and then you play with that puppy, you're getting 3,000 psi from that puppy right here. So of course, the puppy bites you, totally shreds you, and you're like, ow, that hurt you, little jerk, and he just goes harder because he doesn't understand. He thinks you're playing. And so when those things happen, the play has to stop. So here's the thing. Don't take the puppy and put them in timeout because that's not fast enough and that's not the right kind of feedback. The puppy has to learn that their behavior caused that. So puppies shouldn't have free reign of the whole house. Puppies should have discreetly cordoned off areas. You're in a play area with your dog in a pen or with baby gates. So you go bite, ouch, bite, ouch, bite. Okay, see ya. Beep, and you're out for like 5 minutes. And that puppy's like, oh, that sucked. I didn't want you to go away. And then you come back and you go, can we try again? Right? If the puppy's intensity is less, if the puppy is trying hard to limit the force, give them feedback. Like, that's fantastic. Thank you. This is how we play. Oh, ow, 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 ow. That's kind of hard. Okay. Okay. That's good. That's good. That's good. Ow, 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 ow. Ow, ow. All right. See ya. I'm out. And they're like, oh, again. Oh, I got to watch my mouth. I got to do something about this. And so see, that consistent execution over time is how they learn. Don't get me wrong. It sucks. It's not fun. And I get it. There's people that are like, look at my arms, look at my hands. I know. That's what you signed up for when you got a puppy. Like, what do you want, a hug? I'm sorry. But like, it's just like when you have a baby, it's going to poop its pants and wake you up in the middle of the night. Like, stop complaining. I mean, I don't mean to be insensitive about it, but my goal is like, if we're doing the things that we do with the baby to create a good adult later on, we need to be willing to do the hard work now with a puppy to create a great adult dog later on that I can take with me to baseball games, for crying out loud. It's worth it to me to have to wear some gardening gloves when I play with my puppy.
Awesome. Yeah, that was super helpful. So what are some mistakes that people make? I mean, I know we talked a lot about them. You talked about yipping like a puppy, putting them in timeout. What are some other mistakes that they make?
Well, so people, I think it's hard because humans are dumb emotional animals. And so one of the things I think that they do is that they get mad, So puppies not trying to, like I said, puppies are biting because it's coded in their software. It's how they play. And Mother Nature has told them, you must do this so that you can learn how to build your bite inhibition. I mean, wolf cubs learn how to do this, right? They know that when they're playing with their other litter mates or the older wolves, they know that they're not supposed to bite very hard. You save hard biting for like when you're going after prey, right? It's a totally different kind of thing. So I think people get mad and they get impatient. It's hard to keep their eye on the long term. They feel like they're hustling, and then it's 3 weeks in and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I don't even enjoy playing with my puppy anymore. And so I think that is hard for them. And so then they start getting angry, and then they start looking for other methods, or they start trying other gimmicks, then they're doing all the other stupid stuff. They're spraying them in the face with a squirt bottle. They're smashing their tongue with their thumb, or they're, yelling or shoving them away, and either that's going to just jazz the puppy up more, or it's going to make the puppy afraid of you. And those are both really, really counterproductive. There's things you can do if you have a puppy that maybe wasn't socialized with their litter, or it came too early. Maybe it was a rescue, or, you live out in the boonies and you don't have much socialization opportunities. Then you're going to have to put gardening gloves on to protect yourself while you do this work. I mean, it sucks, but this is how you got to do it. So I think, just a lack of consistency with it, and then a lack of patience with it, and just not keeping an eye on the long-term goal. And then just not believing us. I mean, I learned this from, tons of behaviorists, and I've read tons of books. I've been to seminars and classes and trainings. A lot of this work was pioneered by Dr. Ian Dunbar, who is, a giant in the behavior community. He's the guy that invented puppy classes, and he actually participated, like, as one of the researchers in some of these puppy studies that developed this stuff. So it's not like it's a secondhand info for him. Like, he was there. And I think people get hung up, a big mistake, people get hung up in this whole, like, well, I have to establish pack dominance and stuff. And then people think pack dominance means you got to be the biggest jerk in the room. And that's just going to cause problems. Your puppy's not going to learn bite inhibition. They're going to be afraid of you, and they're going to comply with your commands, not because they want to or they're well trained. It's because they're afraid of getting in trouble. I think just, I would say probably, now that I'm kind of sliding into some other territory here, I think the big mistake as far as puppy biting go is not understanding that everything in a puppy's life is connected like a big web. So like I talked about, you may have a stupendously hyperactive puppy that's biting like mad. Like, you may just have like a little buzz saw on your hands, but you can address the biting head on, but then you have to come in the back door and do other things. Like, what are you doing to diminish that energy anyway? Are you playing with that dog? Are you giving them plenty of mental stimulation? Are you teaching them how to cap their energy? Are you giving them chew toys and things like that, so that they have satisfying ways to channel their arousal into, those other things are important, because it informs your puppy biting work too. If you have a dog that's just bored and understimulated, then like I said, when you start playing, there's your 3000 PSI out that little hole. And of course that dog is going to just, it's going to just be a barracuda. So, you got to think in terms of the whole picture, man, the whole picture. Don't just focus on one little problem. What's the whole picture? It's a holistic picture.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. And also just like knowing what to expect. If you're expecting puppy biting, then when it happens, it's okay. Like, that's what you're expecting.
Right. Exactly. I would say, if we're not going over time, I would say the other thing that people do that makes a mistake is that they make endless comparisons to their old dogs. So there's a lot of conversations I have with people where they're like, I've had puppies before. It's never been this bad. What do I do? And I'm like, listen, that's awesome that you had a whole bunch of puppies in your previous experience that didn't give you this much trouble. Like, awesome. Like, mazel tov. That's great. This is the dog you have in front of you right now. Deal with it, and you have to do new things. That's just how it works. Listen, I had Chevys. I had 5 Chevys, and this Toyota, like, I don't understand why it doesn't work the same. Like, do you want a hug? I don't know. Like, deal with it.
Yeah, no, that's another awesome thing to keep in mind. Ian, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for hopping on this call with me.
My pleasure, man. Thanks
if somebody wanted to, of course, yeah. If someone wanted to keep up with you, where would they do that?
Best places to check us out is my business, Simpatico Dog Training. We have an active YouTube channel. We're active on Instagram and Facebook. So look for Simpatico Dog Training, SIMPAWTICO. And our website, also simpatico-training.com, has tons of free resources, and all of our videos and articles and things are all there too, and lots of relevant links.
Cool. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll link those up. And thank you so much for hopping on the call with me.
Thank you, Jake. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.